The courtroom was meant to stay calm and orderly, but instead the entire room exploded with the sound of cracking wood. Heads snapped around instantly. Eyes widened in disbelief. The thick oak bench, the same bench that had stood inside Judge Judy's courtroom for years without ever showing damage, suddenly shattered beneath the weight of one woman. The loud crash rang through the studio like a gunshot. And in a single moment, what should have been an ordinary hearing turned into a courtroom disaster nobody inside that room or watching from home would ever forget. The woman, who the internet would later nickname Karen after the footage went viral, jumped to her feet in outrage. But instead of blaming the broken bench or acknowledging her own humiliation, she pointed directly at Judge Judy herself. Then she said the words that made the courtroom freeze in complete shock. Karen announced that she was suing Judge Judy for damages. Before we continue this unbelievable courtroom story, comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I always enjoy seeing viewers from all over the world. And make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss another insane courtroom showdown like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. At first, people genuinely believed Karen had to be joking. Some thought it was a stunt. Others assumed it was an embarrassing attempt to grab attention before Judy shut it down with one sarcastic comment. But Karen wasn't smiling. She meant every word. Her confidence filled the courtroom like smoke, toxic and impossible to ignore. In her mind, she had transformed a humiliating accident into a golden opportunity. She believed she could turn the audience against the toughest television judge in America. What Karen didn't realize, what nobody realized yet, was that she had just set off one of the most brutal courtroom destructions ever recorded on camera. Because only 47 seconds later, Karen would no longer be talking about a lawsuit. She wouldn't be celebrating victory. Instead, she would sit there completely speechless, staring at a crushing $50,000 penalty while her confidence collapsed in front of millions of viewers. Her reputation would be ruined, her arrogance exposed. Her name permanently attached to one of the most humiliating Judge Judy moments ever aired. The real mystery isn't how Judge Judy defeated her. The real mystery is how Karen ever convinced herself she had a chance in the first place. And that's where this story truly begins, inside a courtroom where entitlement slammed directly into authority, where arrogance challenged experience, where one woman believed she could manipulate the system, only to discover that Judge Judy doesn't just control the courtroom with law. She controls it with absolute finality. This wasn't just another dramatic episode. This became the moment arrogance itself tried to challenge authority on national television. Karen walked into that courtroom carrying herself like a celebrity entering a stage. She believed the cameras were her allies. She imagined the internet would support her for daring to embarrass Judge Judy inside her own courtroom. In Karen's mind, the broken bench was no longer an accident. It was evidence. A weapon, a loophole she thought she could twist into sympathy and profit. But Karen overlooked one very important fact. Judge Judy has spent decades dealing with people who pretend to be victims while the truth sits directly in front of everyone. And Judy recognized weakness immediately. That's the hidden core of this entire story. Karen didn't simply arrive unprepared. She arrived completely blind to the reality of who she was facing. She believed entitlement alone could overpower facts. She assumed Judge Judy was merely a television personality focused on ratings and drama, someone who could be pressured by spectacle and public attention. But Judy doesn't reward arrogance. Judy destroys it. And within 47 seconds, she would prove exactly why millions feared stepping into her courtroom. Think about that number for a second. 47 seconds. That's all it took for the energy in the room to completely flip. That's all it took for Karen's confidence to collapse into humiliation. That's all it took for Judge Judy to expose the truth and hand down a punishment so devastating that even the internet paused in disbelief before erupting in applause. 47 seconds. Less than a minute. Less time than it takes to answer a text message. Less time than it takes for most people to understand what's happening around them. But before we reach that brutal ending, before we reveal exactly how Judge Judy dismantled Karen's entire argument piece by piece, you need to understand why this case mattered so much, because this was never just about a broken bench. It wasn't only about money either. It became about respect, authority, reputation, and what happens when someone tries to challenge a woman who built her entire career exposing lies and humiliating manipulators. Judge Judy has faced thousands of arrogant people throughout her career. She has confronted scammers, liars, attention seekers, and people who believed they were smarter than the courtroom itself. Time after time, she exposed false stories, destroyed fake victimhood, and sent arrogant claimants walking out embarrassed. But Karen attempted something different. She wasn't simply lying, she was directly attacking Judy's authority. She wanted to flip the entire courtroom upside down, turning Judge Judy from the authority figure into the accused. And if Karen had somehow succeeded even slightly, it would have damaged the image Judy spent decades building. That's why the tension inside the room became unbearable after Karen announced the lawsuit. For the first time in years, someone had stood up inside Judge Judy's own courtroom and attempted to sue her directly. It sounded fearless on the surface, but underneath it was pure arrogance disguised as courage. And for one brief moment, some people wondered if Karen had somehow found the first crack in Judge Judy's armor. But Judy already knew the truth. She always does. The brilliance of what happened next wasn't only in what Judy said. It was in how she waited. She allowed Karen to keep talking. She let her confidence grow. She let her continue building a trap around herself. And when the perfect moment arrived, Judy closed it instantly. That's what made those 47 seconds unforgettable, not chaos, precision. And that precision is exactly why Karen didn't just lose the case. She lost everything she thought she was about to gain. When Karen stood there pointing at Judge Judy and threatening legal action, the entire atmosphere inside the courtroom shifted instantly. This wasn't simply about a damaged bench anymore. The situation had become something much bigger. Authority itself was now being challenged in front of a national audience. As ridiculous as Karen's accusation sounded, there was still danger hidden inside it. If she managed to convince even a few people that Judge Judy's courtroom had somehow failed her, then doubt would begin spreading. And doubt is dangerous in a place built entirely on authority and control. For Karen, the situation looked like an opportunity. She believed she had found a way to transform humiliation into victory. In her mind, the accident had become evidence. The embarrassment had become leverage. She imagined herself walking out not only with money, but with attention, sympathy, and the satisfaction of publicly humiliating the most feared courtroom personality on television. Karen truly believed the cameras were helping her. She imagined headlines praising her for standing up to Judge Judy. She pictured herself becoming some kind of viral hero who exposed flaws in the system. To her, this wasn't a mistake anymore. It was a chance to turn herself into the victim and Judy into the villain. But for Judge Judy, the stakes were even higher. This wasn't just another loud claimant throwing around accusations. This was a direct challenge to the foundation of her courtroom authority. If Karen's claim gained even the slightest credibility, it could create a dangerous message. It would suggest that chaos, entitlement, and manipulation could overpower discipline and law. And Judy knew exactly how dangerous that idea could become. Because if one arrogant claimant succeeded in twisting accountability into victimhood, others would eventually try the same strategy. Imagine the flood that would follow. People walking into courtrooms believing performance mattered more than facts. Believing volume mattered more than truth. Believing they could create drama, blame others, and escape consequences simply by acting offended loudly enough. That's why this moment carried so much weight. This wasn't merely entertainment anymore. It became a battle between law and entitlement, between authority and manipulations, between truth and performance. If Karen somehow succeeded, even partially, it wouldn't only damage Judy's reputation. It would weaken the very idea that authority still matters inside a courtroom. But if Judy crushed the claim decisively, it would reinforce everything she spent decades building. The belief that facts always matter more than theatrics, that arrogance collapses when exposed to truth, that authority cannot be bullied by spectacle. The cameras inside that courtroom weren't simply recording another television dispute. They were documenting a test of principle. Could someone weaponize victimhood strongly enough to rewrite reality? Or would Judge Judy once again remind the world why her courtroom remained untouchable? The answer was coming quickly, but before Judy delivered it, everyone inside that room could already feel the gravity of what was unfolding. Karen wasn't just attacking Judy personally. She was attacking the system itself. She was challenging the idea that rules still carried weight, that respect still mattered, that authority still deserved obedience, and that's why Judy's eventual response didn't feel like a simple comeback. It felt like a reckoning. To understand why this confrontation exploded the way it did, you also have to understand who Karen really was. She wasn't just another random courtroom guest. Karen was the type of person who genuinely believed the world existed to serve her. Loud, entitled, convinced every inconvenience was someone else's fault. She had spent years blaming others for situations she created herself. In her neighborhood, people already knew her reputation. Cashiers dreaded dealing with her because she could turn a simple checkout line into a screaming match over pennies. Restaurant workers whispered warnings when they saw her walk through the doors because one missing napkin could trigger a public meltdown. Neighbors avoided confrontation because Karen treated every disagreement like a war she needed to win. To Karen, rules applied to other people, never to her. She believed volume created power. She believed drama created truth. And when she entered Judge Judy's courtroom, she carried that same mindset with her, convinced the cameras would transform her outrage into victory. Karen didn't arrive armed with evidence. She arrived armed with emotion. She thought embarrassment alone would make her believable. In her mind, the broken bench wasn't proof of anything about her. It was proof the court had somehow failed her. And if she repeated that story confidently enough, she believed people would accept it. But what Karen never realized was that Judge Judy had already encountered hundreds of people exactly like her. People who weaponized victimhood, people who mistook arrogance for intelligence, people who thought confidence alone could overpower facts. And Judy had spent decades destroying those people one by one. Karen's real mistake wasn't breaking the bench. Her real mistake was believing the same manipulative behavior that worked in supermarkets, restaurants, and customer service lines would somehow work inside a courtroom built on law and discipline. That arrogance became the fatal flaw in her entire strategy. She underestimated her opponent completely. Karen thought she was confronting a television celebrity, someone who cared more about ratings than reality. What she was actually facing was a legal veteran with decades of experience exposing lies in seconds. And when Karen stood up confidently pointing fingers and making accusations, she never saw the trap closing around her. The truth was simple. Karen wasn't the victim of a broken bench. She was the victim of her own arrogance. And inside Judge Judy's courtroom, arrogance always comes with the highest price possible. If Karen represented entitlement and chaos, then Judge Judy represented the exact opposite: discipline, provision, authority. To understand why challenging Judy was such a catastrophic mistake, you need to understand who she truly is. Before becoming a television icon, Judith Sheindlin built her reputation the hard way inside New York's legal system. Long before cameras followed her every word, she handled some of the toughest family court cases imaginable. Broken homes, manipulative parents, endless excuses, emotional performances. She spent years watching people twist truth into whatever version benefited them most, and every single day she sharpened the instincts that would later make her famous. By the time television introduced her to millions of viewers, Judy had already mastered the ability to detect dishonesty almost instantly. She could hear lies hidden inside someone's tone. She could see manipulation in tiny facial expressions. She could sense arrogance before someone even finished speaking. Her courtroom wasn't just a studio, it was a battlefield, and Judy controlled every inch of it. That's the detail Karen completely failed to understand. Judge Judy wasn't some nervous manager Karen could intimidate in public. She wasn't a customer service worker forced to apologize endlessly. Judy didn't negotiate with entitlement, she dismantled it. And what made her especially dangerous wasn't only her intelligence, it was her speed. Judy doesn't need hours to expose nonsense. She only needs moments. That's why those 47 seconds became legendary, because in less than a minute, she transformed Karen's confidence into public humiliation. Judy's entire style has always been built on directness. No sugarcoating. No emotional manipulation. No tolerance for theatrics replacing facts. When someone like Karen enters her courtroom believing victimhood alone can win, Judy immediately sees through the performance. She has watched too many manipulative people attempt the same strategy, and she knows exactly how to destroy it. But Judy represents something even larger than courtroom skill. She represents accountability itself. That's why millions respect her, not simply because she's entertaining, but because she reminds people that excuses cannot overpower truth forever. When Judge Judy speaks, people listen because they know every word carries weight. And when she makes a ruling, it comes with finality. That was the woman Karen decided to challenge publicly. That was the woman Karen believed she could embarrass. But Judy didn't sit behind that bench as just another television personality. She sat there carrying decades of earned authority, built through endless battles against arrogance and deception. And the moment Karen made her accusation, Judy didn't panic. She didn't lose control. She simply waited, calmly Pat Penley, preparing to respond the only way she knows how, with precision, with authority, and with destruction Karen would never recover from. The second the courtroom staff finished clearing away the shattered remains of the broken bench, the entire atmosphere changed. What had started as an embarrassing accident was now turning into something much more serious. Karen stood there with her shoulders squared and her chin lifted high, acting as though she had suddenly become the victim in some massive injustice. She pointed dramatically toward Judge Judy, her voice loud enough to fill every corner of the room. "This happened because of your negligence," she declared confidently, "and I deserve compensation." A wave of shocked whispers swept through the audience. Even the bailiff looked stunned for a moment. Karen wasn't simply making a complaint anymore. She was openly accusing Judge Judy herself of responsibility. But Judge Judy didn't interrupt. She didn't shout. She didn't slam the gavel. Instead, she sat perfectly still, and that silence became terrifying. Because while Karen kept talking, Judy was already dismantling her entire argument piece by piece inside her head. Karen believed she was gaining momentum. She thought her confidence was controlling the room. In reality, she was building the exact trap Judy wanted her to build. Karen continued talking nonstop, repeating the word negligence over and over again, like saying it loudly enough would magically turn it into truth. She waved her hands dramatically toward the broken bench as though it were proof of some massive failure by the court itself. "It's unsafe," she shouted. "You put me in danger." The louder Karen became, the calmer Judy appeared. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some people glanced toward Judge Judy, waiting for her to finally respond. But Judy remained motionless, her expression unreadable except for her eyes, sharp, focused, pat. Then finally, after allowing Karen to speak just long enough, Judy moved, slowly, deliberately. Her pen tapped lightly against the desk, once, then twice. And when she finally spoke, Her voice sliced through the courtroom like a blade. "Are you finished?" The room froze instantly. Karen stopped mid-sentence. For the first time since the confrontation began, uncertainty flickered across her face. Judge Judy leaned slightly forward. "Because if you're done," she continued calmly, "I'd like to address your claim." The silence that followed felt crushing. Everyone inside that courtroom understood something important had just shifted. Karen had entered the room believing she controlled the narrative. But with one simple sentence, Judy had taken complete control back. And Karen didn't even realize yet how badly she had already lost, because the famous 47 seconds had officially begun. Judge Judy's eyes locked onto Karen with absolute focus. "You claim this court was negligent," Judy said calmly. "So let's examine that." Karen shifted nervously in place, but Judy didn't stop. Within seconds, she began systematically dismantling the accusation using facts Karen clearly hadn't expected. "The courtroom benches are inspected regularly," Judy explained. "Maintenance records are updated consistently. This bench has supported thousands of individuals over the years without a single structural failure. Every sentence landed harder than the last. Court staff immediately produced inspection documents, dates, reports, maintenance records, evidence stronger than any emotional performance Karen could possibly deliver." Karen attempted to interrupt. "But, quiet," Judy snapped sharply. The single word silenced the room instantly. "You'll speak when I allow you to speak." The audience leaned forward. This wasn't a disagreement anymore. It was a demolition. Judge Judy continued with surgical precision. "The problem here," she explained coldly, "is not courtroom negligence. The problem is personal responsibility." Karen's confidence visibly weakened. She looked around as though searching for support, but the energy in the room had completely changed. The sympathy she expected was disappearing rapidly. Then came the moment nobody anticipated. Judge Judy flipped the entire case around. "You're attempting to sue this court for negligence," Judy said. "But the negligence we're discussing actually belongs to you." Karen blinked in confusion. Judy's voice sharpened. "You knew your own physical condition. You ignored limitations. And now you're attempting to transform your personal choices into somebody else's legal liability." The words hit Karen like a physical blow. Judy tapped her pen against the desk once more. "Not in my courtroom." Karen's face flushed bright red. The arrogance she carried into the room began draining out of her expression in real time. Her mouth opened slightly as if she wanted to argue, but no words came out. Judge Judy didn't let the moment breathe. She moved directly to the final strike. "Your lawsuit is dismissed," she announced firmly. Gasps spread through the gallery, but Judy wasn't finished. "And because this court does not tolerate frivolous lawsuits designed purely for attention and manipulation," she continued, "you are ordered to pay a $50,000 penalty." The courtroom exploded. People whispered loudly. Some gasped openly. Others covered their mouths in disbelief. Even the bailiff looked stunned by the speed and force of what had just happened. Karen stood frozen. Her jaw dropped completely. Only moments earlier, she believed she was about to humiliate Judge Judy publicly. Now she sat there, realizing she had just destroyed herself instead. 47 seconds. That's all it took. 47 seconds for confidence to collapse into humiliation. 47 seconds for entitlement to slam directly into authority. 0.47 seconds for Judge Judy to completely dismantle Karen's accusation and turn it into a financial disaster. Karen looked physically shaken. The swagger was gone. The confidence disappeared. All that remained was shock. The same audience Karen expected to cheer for her was now staring at her with disbelief. Some even shaking their heads while others quietly laughed at how badly her plan had failed. Judge Judy leaned back calmly in her chair again, completely composed. To her, this wasn't emotional. It wasn't personal. It was simply justice. Another arrogant claimant had entered her courtroom believing they could manipulate the system. And once again, another arrogant claimant had walked away destroyed by facts. If you think Judge Judy handled Karen exactly the way arrogance deserves to be handled, hit that like button right now and drop a Gisto emoji in the comments, because this was one of the wildest courtroom takedowns ever captured on television. The moment the gavel struck and the $50,000 penalty became official, the atmosphere inside the courtroom changed permanently. Nobody there was simply watching a case anymore. They were witnessing a public collapse. Karen, who had entered the room with dramatic confidence and loud accusations, now looked completely defeated. Her shoulders dropped. Her face lost all color. Her mouth opened several times as if she wanted to defend herself. But nothing came out. For perhaps the first time in her life, Karen had no performance left, and that silence carried more weight than anything she had shouted earlier. Because everyone understood this was never truly about the money. It was about power. Karen attempted to challenge one of the most dominant authority figures in television history. And in less than a minute, Judge Judy didn't just defend that authority, she strengthened it. That's why the moment became unforgettable. Not only because Karen lost, but because of how quickly and completely her arrogance collapsed. Once facts entered the conversation, Karen's exit from the courtroom looked nothing like her entrance. She had walked in confidently, acting like a star entering a stage. Now she walked out looking shattered. The cameras she once believed would support her suddenly felt like weapons recording every second of her humiliation forever. And within hours, those clips exploded across social media. Within only a few hours, clips of Karen's courtroom collapse were spreading across the internet at unbelievable speed. Every social media platform exploded with reactions. People replayed the moment over and over again. The footage of Karen confidently threatening Judge Judy, followed immediately by her complete destruction, became instant viral material. One clip in particular dominated the internet, the exact moment Judge Judy calmly dismissed Karen's lawsuit and slammed her with a $50,000 penalty. Millions watched it, then watched it again. The internet couldn't stop talking about how quickly Karen's confidence disappeared once Judge Judy started speaking with actual facts and authority. Hashtags appeared almost immediately. Karen meets karma. 47 seconds of destruction. Never challenge Judge Judy. People turned the case into memes, reaction videos, commentary clips, and even motivational posts about arrogance and accountability. Every platform seemed flooded with screenshots of Karen's stunned expression, sitting frozen in silence after the ruling. The internet, which Karen believed would support her, had completely turned against her instead. And that may have hurt even more than the financial penalty itself, because Karen hadn't only lost inside the courtroom, she lost publicly. Millions of strangers now recognized her as the woman who thought she could embarrass Judge Judy and failed spectacularly. Late-night comedy hosts joked about the incident. Commentary channels broke down every second of the confrontation. Legal analysts praised Judge Judy's ability to regain control of the courtroom instantly without ever raising her voice emotionally. One legal commentator described the moment perfectly. This wasn't just a courtroom ruling, he explained. It was a masterclass in authority dismantling entitlement. And honestly, that's exactly what it became. The internet wasn't celebrating Karen. It was studying her collapse. People replayed the footage because it represented something satisfying to millions watching from home. For many viewers, Karen symbolized every entitled person they had ever encountered in real life. The customer who screams at employees, the person who refuses responsibility, the individual who always blames others instead of themselves. Watching Judge Judy dismantle that behavior so quickly felt almost therapeutic to audiences. And the deeper lesson resonated far beyond entertainment. Karen genuinely believed confidence alone could overpower truth. She thought volume mattered more than facts. She believed victimhood could be weaponized into power. Instead, she learned a brutal reality. When arrogance collides with genuine authority, arrogance always loses. That's why the case became so much bigger than a broken bench or even a television courtroom. It transformed into a cultural lesson. A reminder that accountability still exists. A reminder that entitlement eventually crashes into reality. And perhaps most importantly, a reminder that Judge Judy's courtroom remains one of the few places where manipulation simply does not work. Meanwhile, Karen's humiliation only continued growing. The viral clips followed her everywhere online. Comment sections mocked her confidence. Memes turned her into the face of public embarrassment. Some people even counted down the famous 47 seconds frame by frame just to analyze how quickly her arrogance disappeared once Judy took control. The internet never forgets. And Karen had unknowingly attached her name permanently to one of the most humiliating courtroom moments ever broadcast. But while Karen became a cautionary tale, Judge Judy's reputation somehow grew even stronger. Fans called it one of the greatest takedowns of her entire career. Longtime viewers praised her composure, pointing out how she never lost emotional control despite being directly challenged inside her own courtroom. That's what made the moment so powerful. Judy didn't scream. She didn't panic. She didn't turn the confrontation into chaos. She simply used facts, timing, and authority with devastating precision. And that calm control made Karen's emotional collapse look even worse by comparison. Even critics who normally dismissed courtroom television as simple entertainment admitted this case felt different. Because underneath the drama was something very real, a public demonstration of how quickly lies and entitlement fall apart when confronted with truth. For Judge Judy herself, the situation wasn't extraordinary at all. That's perhaps the most remarkable part. To viewers around the world, the moment looked historic. But for Judy, it was simply another arrogant person underestimating her courtroom. Another manipulator believing they were smarter than the system. Another claimant learning too late that Judge Judy's authority isn't built on television drama. It's built on decades of experience exposing nonsense. And that's exactly why Karen never stood a chance. She thought she was entering a battle of attention. What she actually entered was a battle of discipline versus arrogance. And discipline wins every time. Weeks later, people still discuss those 47 seconds online. Law professors even reference the case while teaching students about courtroom authority and frivolous lawsuits. Public speakers use the clip as an example of how confidence without preparation becomes self-destruction. The phrase, "Don't Karen yourself in Judge Judy's courtroom," even started appearing jokingly online whenever people acted overly entitled in public videos. Karen herself disappeared from public view almost immediately after the episode exploded online. But the internet didn't let the story disappear with her. Every few weeks, the clip resurfaced again. New audiences discovered it, new reactions flooded social media, and every replay strengthened the same lesson. Arrogance feels powerful right until reality arrives. Judge Judy, meanwhile, continued exactly as she always had, moving from case to case, exposing lies, eating manipulative behavior, maintaining total control over her courtroom, because for her, this wasn't some once-in-a-lifetime confrontation. It was simply another day watching entitlement self-destruct under pressure. And honestly, that's what makes the story unforgettable, not just Karen's embarrassment. But the speed of the collapse, the way confidence transformed into silence within seconds, the way authority calmly dismantled arrogance without ever losing control, that's why those 47 seconds became legendary. Not because Judge Judy screamed louder, but because truth didn't need to scream at all. Long after the courtroom emptied and the cameras stopped rolling, the impact of those 47 seconds continued spreading everywhere. People weren't just watching another dramatic television moment anymore. They were watching a perfect example of what happens when arrogance collides head first with accountability. Karen had entered the courtroom believing confidence alone could carry her to victory. She thought outrage could overpower facts. She believed public embarrassment could be twisted into sympathy and eventually into money. In her mind, she wasn't walking into danger. She thought she was walking into opportunity, but what made the entire downfall so unforgettable was how quickly reality destroyed that illusion. One moment, Karen stood there loudly accusing Judge Judy herself, convinced she had somehow gained control of the courtroom. And less than a minute later, she sat speechless while her entire argument collapsed in front of millions of people. That transformation became the heart of the story, because deep down, this was never really about a broken bench. It was about responsibility. Karen spent her entire life avoiding accountability. Every problem became somebody else's fault. Every embarrassment became an excuse to play the victim. Every confrontation became an opportunity to shift blame onto whoever happened to be standing nearby. And for years, that strategy probably worked. Loudness often intimidates people. Confidence often manipulates people. Entitlement often exhausts people into surrender, but Judge Judy was different. She didn't reward emotional performances. She rewarded facts. And that's exactly why Karen's strategy failed so completely. The moment Karen realized she couldn't emotionally manipulate the courtroom anymore, panic took over. The confidence disappeared from her face. Her dramatic outrage vanished. What remained was someone finally confronting consequences she never expected to face publicly, and the public nature of that collapse made it unforgettable. Millions of viewers watched arrogance crumble in real time, not privately, not quietly, but under the bright lights of a courtroom where every expression, every mistake, and every failed excuse became permanent. That's why the internet reacted so strongly. Because people recognize something truthful inside those 47 seconds. Everyone has encountered a Karen at some point in life. Someone who weaponizes victimhood. Someone who refuses accountability. Someone who believes rules apply only to others. Watching that kind of arrogance finally lose felt deeply satisfying for audiences around the world. And Judge Judy represented the opposite of that behavior. Discipline, authority, truth, consequences. She didn't need dramatic speeches to win the confrontation. She didn't need emotional manipulation or insults. She simply relied on facts and timing. That calm precision is what made Karen's collapse so devastating, because once Judy started speaking, the illusion disappeared immediately. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson from the entire story. Confidence without truth eventually destroys itself. Arrogance without accountability eventually collapses. And entitlement always becomes dangerous when someone mistakes it for strength. Karen believed she could manipulate the system. Instead, the system exposed her completely, publicly, permanently. Even weeks later, people still replayed the famous clip online. Reaction videos continued appearing. Comment sections remained filled with viewers laughing at how quickly Karen's confidence evaporated. But underneath the humor was something more important. A warning. Because the story reminded people that actions have consequences, especially when someone becomes arrogant enough to believe consequences no longer apply to them. Karen thought she was special. Judge Judy reminded her she wasn't. That's why the ruling felt bigger than television. It became symbolic, a public reminder that truth still matters, even in a world overflowing with noise, performance, and fake victimhood. And for Judge Judy, the moment simply reinforced why her reputation remains unmatched. For decades, people have entered her courtroom believing they could outsmart her, overpower her, or manipulate the situation in their favor. And for decades, they've learned the same painful lesson. Judge Judy always sees through the act. That's what makes her dangerous, not anger, not intimidation, clarity. She recognizes arrogance immediately, then dismantles it piece by piece until nothing remains except reality. Karen never understood that. She believed she was battling a television personality. In reality, she was facing decades of courtroom experience sharpened into absolute authority. And authority doesn't panic when challenged. It responds calmly, decisively, finally. That's exactly what happened during those legendary 47 seconds. A woman walked into court believing she could embarrass Judge Judy publicly. Instead, She walked out as one of the most infamous courtroom humiliations the internet had ever seen. The broken bench became irrelevant almost instantly. What people remembered was the collapse. The moment arrogance shattered under pressure, the instant entitlement discovered its limits, and the reminder that truth doesn't need to shout to win. That's why this story continues surviving online long after the episode ended, because people don't just remember the penalty, they remember the lesson. You cannot manipulate reality forever. Eventually, facts arrive. Eventually, authority responds. Eventually, arrogance collapses under its own weight. And when that collapse happens inside Judge Judy's courtroom, the entire world watches. If you enjoyed this unbelievable courtroom story, make sure you subscribe right now and turn on notifications so you never miss another legendary Judge Judy takedown. And let us know in the comments which courtroom moment shocked you the most, because these unforgettable confrontations continue proving one thing over and over again. Arrogance may walk into the courtroom confidently, but accountability always walks out the winner.